Bond reform continues to be a major focus for debate here in South Carolina, and one who is pushing behind bond reform is the Attorney General Alan Wilson, who's joining us live now this evening. So, Mr. Wilson, thank you so much for joining us. When it comes to this bond reform, your letter to these lawmakers urging that they do something in the State House to go ahead and reform how bond works, you say you strongly support House Bill 3532, kind of lays out extra penalties for criminals. How come something has not been done yet when it comes to reforming bond here in the state?
Well, first off, one of the reasons I believe that nothing has been done yet because there just haven't been a public outcry. Recently, just literally in the last couple of weeks, there was an individual from Dillon County who was out on bond for committing a murder. And while out on bond, no one was monitoring him, even though they were required to do so under the conditions of his bond. And while this individual was out on bond, he committed another murder and an attempted murder. And there was no teeth to the regulatory scheme. And that's what this bill is seeking to do. We want to create a regulatory framework in which when a defendant is out on bond, number one, we want to slam the door on them being released when they've committed a violation of their bond, and then being released. We want to slam the door on that. But just as important, we want to have rules in place that have actual teeth, an enforcement mechanism that when somebody says they're going to monitor you when you are out on bond, that they actually monitor you. And if you violate the conditions of your bond, that not only the defendant is held responsible for violating the conditions of the bond, but the person charged with monitoring them is held responsible and could possibly even lose their license to conduct more monitoring with other defendants. So we currently don't have any enforcement mechanism in place. And there are many components to this bill, but the component I'm very strongly advocating for would be giving SLED the regulatory and statutory authority to slam the door on people not doing their jobs when it comes to monitoring violent criminals out in our communities.
And again, you had made reference to the bill. You said you strongly support it. Does it do enough, you think? Or you think this is just a starting point?
I think this is just a starting point. Obviously, the House and the Senate and the conference committee, they're going to be debating some of the penalties that could occur or not occur if someone violates. I'm always going to be for penalties for reoffenders. I think when you look at the percentages of reoffenders, I mean, it's an astronomically high number of people who commit violent offenses who are repeat offenders. And so we've got to stop basically the revolving door in the prison system. We got to keep people locked up who can't, for some reason, they just can't stop breaking the law. They can't stop killing people for some reason. They need to remain in prison for a very, very long time. And those people that are charged with making sure that the ones that we do let out on bond, the people who are charged with monitoring them, they need to be held accountable when they fail to do their job. There are a lot of good bondsmen out there. There are a lot of good monitoring companies out here who follow the rules. But for those who do not follow the rules, they don't need to be in the business of monitoring violent criminals out on the streets.
You've also called for judicial reforms. We've talked to upstate sheriffs saying that it's really kind of a backward system when these judges are put into place. So where are the judges held accountable in all of this? Because they're the ones laying them out on bond.
Well, again, it goes to the incentive structure we put into the way we elect judges. I mean, obviously, I think the way we elect judges is wrong. I think it needs to be looked at. I think that when a judge fails to keep a violent criminal behind bars because they let them out with almost no bond or very low bond, and this person reoffends, there's a history of this occurring, how do you hold that judge accountable? That judge is in office for another 6 years, and the only people that can remove that judge are the legislators that elected them. And so what I would like to do is I would like to give more direct oversight of the executive branch of government, namely the governor, who places appointments on the committee that elects judges, or at least elects the candidates for election by the General Assembly. We need to create more accountability in the way that South Carolina elects its judges. Right now, it is very difficult to hold a bad judge accountable when they fail to do their job.
And so we've heard the push from the governor. We're hearing the push from you. You have had press conference. You've had letters. You're sitting here with us now. So you had said it's going to take public outcry to get something done. So what is your message to anyone at home who may be watching this? What are you urging them to do, and what is the role that they can play in this bond reform?
Well, to people out there who are watching me right now, call your legislators, call people in government and tell them that enough is enough, that we need to have judicial reform, we need to have bond reform, we need to make sure that violent criminals remain in prison, and those people who do get out on bond, that they are held accountable when they fail to live up to the conditions, and the people monitoring are failed to living up to the conditions of the bond. Also, The way we elect judges has to change. And in the next General Assembly session beginning in January, that is going to be the #1 priority for me, is to make sure that we give more transparency, more accountability in the election of judges. The people have a right to know who is serving on the bench and when those persons serving on the bench fail to do their jobs.
All right, hopefully something is done, because it seems like these repeat offenders just keep happening more and more, especially here in the upstate. So, Attorney General Alan Wilson, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, today, the governor taking to Twitter, echoing Wilson's call for change, saying in part, quote, "I ask every South Carolinian who is tired of the senseless night after night violent behavior by repeat criminals with guns, contact your state senator. Demand they close the revolving door for criminals with illegal guns before they go home for the year."